Welcome back to another episode of HealthCap Weekly Wrap. We're so glad you're joining us again. This week, we're covering a wide range of stories that really matter for folks working in senior living. We'll be talking about tuberculosis, aggressive forms of pneumonia, antibiotic use in telemedicine, a great infection prevention podcast, a powerful investigative story on fall response policies, and a professional development opportunity for directors of nursing. So, yes, there's a lot to unpack, but all of it is incredibly relevant.
Let's start with the tuberculosis because it's making a quiet comeback, and long-term care communities really need to pay attention.
Yeah, this one comes from ACA and NCAL. They put out a short but really useful brief for infection preventionists on TB. And even though it's a little clinical, the core message is important for anyone working in a senior living community.
Totally. I think the reason this one stood out is that a lot of people, even in healthcare, tend to think of TB as something from the past. But the truth is, it's still very much with us.
Exactly. The CDC reported over 8,000 TB cases in the U.S. last year. And that might not sound like a massive number, but TB spreads through the air. In shared indoor environments like ours, it can become a serious problem fast.
The brief also does a good job breaking down the difference between latent TB and active TB. So, latent TB means the person is infected but has no symptoms and is not contagious. But when it becomes active, then we are dealing with something potentially very dangerous.
And here's the tricky part. In older adults, TB symptoms don't always look like what we expect. You might not see a cough or fever. It could be fatigue, a little confusion, or maybe some unexplained weight loss, all of which could easily be chalked up to aging or other conditions.
Right. That's why the takeaway here is all about vigilance. We need good screening protocols. We need staff who are trained to recognize when something is off. And we need to respond early rather than waiting until symptoms escalate.
It's also a broader reminder that infection control isn't just about COVID. There are plenty of other threats that never really went away. TB is one of them.
All right, keeping with respiratory illnesses for a second. There was another article on Medscape that really caught our attention. It was all about the most aggressive types of pneumonia. And it's eye-opening.
It really is. The article goes into detail about some of the more dangerous strains. We're talking about MRSA pneumonia, Klebsiella, Pseudomonas. These are infections that can develop quickly and become life-threatening, especially in vulnerable older adults.
And the scariest part is how subtle they can start. The person might seem a little more tired than usual. Maybe their appetite drops. But within 24 or 48 hours, things can take a sharp turn.
That's what makes early recognition so critical. Because once those aggressive strains take hold, treatment becomes harder, and the window for intervention gets very small.
So for senior living staff, the message here is simple. Pay attention. Don't dismiss minor changes, especially in residents with a history of respiratory issues or recent hospitalizations.
And it's not just about responding fast, it's also about prevention. Keeping residents hydrated, encouraging mobility, managing chronic illness as well, and having good infection control practices can all lower risk.
And this ties into our next topic really well. Another Medscape piece, a little older but still spot on, focused on antibiotic use in telemedicine, especially how often antibiotics are prescribed during virtual visits.
Yeah, and this is something we're seeing more of. As telehealth becomes more common in senior living, especially for after-hours care, the risks of overprescribing grow too.
The article pointed out that virtual providers might feel pressured to do something, and antibiotics become the default. But often they're not needed, especially for viral infections.
And we know that unnecessary antibiotic use contributes to resistance, which, going back to that last article, is how we end up with those hard-to-treat pneumonias.
Exactly. So what can we do? First, make sure your telemedicine partners are aligned with your policies. Encourage clear documentation. Get your nurses involved in those calls when possible. And educate families about when antibiotics help and when they don't.
It's really about creating a culture where stewardship is part of the everyday conversation. And that applies whether care is in person or virtual.
Now, let's pivot to something a little lighter but still incredibly helpful. There's a podcast out there called AJIC, Science into Practice. It's created by the American Journal of Infection Control.
Yeah, I've listened to a few episodes. They're short, practical, and full of actionable insights. Perfect for busy professionals who don't have time to sit and read long journal articles.
They take real research and translate it into what it means on the floor. Stuff like hand hygiene audits, disinfection protocols, outbreak prevention. It's great for infection preventionists, but honestly useful for DONs, admins, and clinical teams too.
And it's something you could even incorporate into staff meetings. Play an episode, then have a 5-minute discussion about what applies to your community.
It's one of those resources that makes staying informed a little easier. And when people feel like they're learning together, it really boosts engagement.
Speaking of engagement, let's talk about that Fox 9 news story from Minnesota. It's not an easy one, but it's important. The report focused on senior living communities refusing to help residents who have fallen, instead calling 911.
Yeah, this is about so-called no-lift or no-touch policies. The idea is that staff are not allowed to help someone off the floor due to injury risk or liability. So instead, they call EMS, even if the resident is not hurt, even if they just need a little help getting up.
And what's happening is EMS crews are being overwhelmed with these calls. Some report going to the same community multiple times a day just to help someone back into a chair or bed.
The most tragic part was the story of a woman who fell and had to wait over 40 minutes before help arrived. She later passed away, and the facility said they followed policy.
So that raises the question, who is the policy protecting? And what message does it send to residents?
Exactly. We understand that lifting residents carries risks. No one wants staff getting injured. But there are ways to address that with training, equipment, and clear protocols.
There are safe lift devices, there's staff education, there's partnering with rehab providers to assess who's at risk for frequent falls and put plans in place.
And it's not just about logistics. There's an emotional cost, too. Imagine being told that no one can help you while you lie on the floor, scared and vulnerable. That erodes trust.
If you're in a leadership position, take time to revisit your fall response policies. Talk with your frontline staff, talk with your EMS partners, look at how long response times are in your area, and most importantly, talk with your residents and their families about what they expect and deserve.
All right, let's end with something constructive and supportive. PharMerica, in partnership with NADONA, has launched a new 4-part webinar series called The Successful DON, and the first session is coming up February 17th.
Yeah, and this one is tailored for people who are just stepping into the director of nursing role in long-term care. That transition can be overwhelming. You're suddenly responsible for everything, from staffing to compliance to resident outcomes.
The first 4 weeks are critical. This webinar helps new DONs understand what to prioritize, how to get organized, who to lean on, and where to find the key information that keeps things running.
The learning objectives are very practical. By the end, attendees should be able to name 3 essential things to learn right away, 3 operational areas to keep eyes on constantly, and 3 systems that directly impact resident care and safety.
It also offers 1 hour of continuing education credit for both nurses and administrators. And yes, you do have to attend live, but it's free and packed with value.
If you're a new DON or if you're mentoring one, this is a fantastic opportunity. It sets a foundation and shows that leadership development is something we're taking seriously in this industry.
Supporting your clinical leaders doesn't just help them. It benefits the entire community. From staff retention to resident care, everything improves when your DON is confident and well-equipped.
All right, that brings us to the end of this week's HealthCap Weekly Wrap.
Thanks so much for spending some time with us today. We hope you heard something that helps you feel more prepared, more informed, and more empowered in your work.
If you want to dive deeper into any of the stories we covered, you can always find the full links and details in the weekly roundup on Angie's blog at healthcapusa.com/Angie's-blog.
We'll see you next time with more insights, updates, and conversations that matter for senior living.
Take care and stay well.